right. Hey guys, thanks for joining for our second session on fundraising training. Last time we started out looking at some scripture, just looking at just the biblical viewpoint of fundraising and just diving into what that looks like, that not basically not looking at our supporters, our donors as dollar signs or a necessary means to an end, but that they're on the team. They're um, fundraising is also a form of ministry, and we pour into other people's lives, and there's other ways for them to be involved than just giving financially. And so we ended last time just getting into a little practical stuff, looking at 5 questions that are commonly asked in fundraising or by supporters, potential supporters, if you aren't already answering them. And then we just talked a little bit about having a plan in terms of that. We see that when people have an intentional plan, they raise 800% more than our ministry partners who are comparable to them. So just having a plan is really important. And but really before you sit down to put a plan in place, it's really something that you want to go before the Lord and you want to ask him what the plan is. I think a lot of times we see people in ministry kind of doing the opposite of putting a plan in place and then asking the Lord to bless it. And I think we need to do it the other way around, of asking him what the plan is. I think
Mhm.
you see that in scripture in the beginning of Acts. Jesus has risen from the dead and then rose into heaven, and you see the body of Christ that remained praying. It says, I forget what piece of scripture it was there in the beginning of Acts, but it says they prayed continuously. And then you see the first time that they're there. I think it's Paul is preaching there in Acts. 5,000 people um, then met the Lord. And so it wasn't that they were planning and having strategic meetings and making to-do lists, but it just says they prayed continuously. So I feel like that is a key to an avenue of success, is continuing to come at it with a heart of prayer. So once you do that and you feel like you have some guidance and direction of where to go, I think a really important first step is organizing your contacts. And I just see so many times of people they have an old Excel spreadsheet, which then means that 30 other people have a different version of that same spreadsheet who are on their team, which means no one has the actual correct one. So I encourage people, if you're using a spreadsheet, that's fine to use. I still use them. Um, Putting it in Google Sheets so that there's one version and it's always updated. But then I just see people like they have a list of people who supporters, potential supporters, other people who are involved in volunteering. They have a bunch of contacts in their phone, and then they have a bunch in their email, and then they have a bunch on a notepad, and just a bunch in MailChimp or Constant Contact. And so just really taking the time to get them all in one place. I really feel like having an organized or unorganized contact database it's kind of the linchpin to the operation. It's really what slows you down when you want to make a move to really um, start raising some money. And so once it's organized, obviously organize it in terms of first and last name and spouse and email address, phone number, mailing address, um, and then having a column of when you last, like a notes column. In there you put like when you last met with them or reached out and when you're going to reach out next, and then incorporating this into your prayer life of what you're praying for them about. If you're just getting started or haven't reached out to your supporters in a while, I'd encourage you to um, also have a column where you organize folks in terms of hot, medium, and cold. And that's the hot, medium, cold is not in terms of dollar signs of what they can give. That's relationally who you closest to. And the idea is that you meet with call on the hots first and work through that list. And just being strategic in that as well of geographically, it might be somebody far away because of technologies these days, not putting someone who doesn't live near you on the cold list, but using technology to have those types of calls in Zoom or Google Meets or something like that.
And the first time that this made, again, utilizing Young Life stuff, the PPL and all that kind of stuff, that I thought, who needs it? Like, it's really good stuff, and having it in place, you don't need it till you want to use it. And then if you're having to get it together, then you're behind. So
Hmm.
I'm not saying anything other than what you just said, but I believe it's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many great, you just said PPL, which is a Young Life branded thing, but there's so many great softwares and systems that you can organize this in. And so just use something, but at the same time, like you don't have to pick a software. Google Sheet or Excel is fine as well, as long as it's organized and you're keeping it updated.
It is
I would say,
really,
oh, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say it is really challenging for organizations that haven't put this in place. Like I think what you're saying is it seems like a small thing, but it's really huge. I'm doing it for an organization right now, just part-time, and I'm finding that, the different pieces of donor information are spread far and wide amongst all the different board members and stakeholders.
Hmm.
It's like every person is a gatekeeper for different relationships, and getting it all in one place and understanding who is the gatekeeper for that relationship is so important. And it's taking a ton of time to really to
Hmm.
collect all of that and put it in one
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. And that, I mean, just what you said right there, the gatekeeper to the relationship, you might, in in your own spreadsheet, you might want to have a column of who's the key relationship that has connected you to this donor. Hey, Pepe, I was just talking through putting a fundraising plan in place. We're recording right now in this call, so thanks for joining us. Um, and we were just talking about just the importance of looking back at past years giving to have a realistic goal, but also to look at trends. And so often people see that so and so gives every year the same time. So it might be a good time, be like the month before or weeks before, to set up a coffee with them and share about what's going on in the ministry, and just thinking strategically like that. But people are just always surprised at who they've lost at as a supporter, and just the rate that they do lose supporters. So just looking back over a few years, just an avenue to regain support there. And this next thing is just really like, if someone is having a focused fundraising season, I really encourage people to have focused fundraising season, so that it really doesn't have to be in always and forever. If you're just getting started and you're in a slump, I think it feels like it's just going to be for all eternity that you're going to have to be fundraising. And it can become something to where you're managing relationships and you're communicating well, giving updates, but you can have a really intense season, so then you can enter another season of not really maintaining, but just doing ministry, and it becomes just a way of life. And so I think setting some goals for face-to-face meetings. A lot of times I see people setting goals in terms of how many people they want to have a face-to-face meeting with over the course of a month. And I find that to be not a realistic way. I think it needs to be a weekly thing. Like, I want to have two or three a week or one a week. Because I feel like so many times when people do that on a monthly scale, they're like, oh yeah, I want to have 20 face-to-face meetings next month. It's like, no, that's not happening. That's so many. Like, you're not gonna have any time for anything else. So a weekly goal is really helpful. Also, the virtual side of things, we just have a lot of overseas ministry partners. And so for folks overseas, virtual meetings is really a norm now, and
Hmm.
happens a lot. And so I think if it's new to you or it's something that you want to get into, setting up some practice runs with some low hanging fruit, maybe a current supporter or board member, and just giving it a practice run. But I think what I hear from folks is just them hearing that it's a norm and other people are doing it, and has really been helpful. And people are like, oh, I can do that too. And it's just um, there's just the normal awkwardness of Zoom calls and Google Meets, and once you just get over that, it's not that big of a deal. Um, but really trying to figure out how to do those well can really pay off in the long run. Next, both this is kind of some prep for face-to-face meetings or virtual meetings would be writing out your stories and taking, I think, just setting a goal there too of I'm going to write out 3 to 5 stories this week and really completely writing them out so you get all the details and know where to emphasize things, and maybe you can think of a piece of scripture to share as a part of that. But you're also writing them out because there are potential videos there. There's opportunities to share them in your monthly update using MailChimp or Constant Contact, social media posts, like I said, videos, but also when you're having an in-person meeting. So I feel like that's like the scary or hardest part of a face-to-face or virtual meeting for people, is knowing what to share. And so writing out, we all know um, the ministry highlights and our mission and our vision and our 3 objectives and how we're meeting the need. We can spat those out, but having the stories written out, if it's been a while or you haven't done it before, can really help calm things down, and you realize, oh, I know my stuff, and it's encouraging yourself. Um, Next would be sending out handwritten thank yous. As an organization for our own ministry partners, we design custom thank yous. So we have a staff person that will like throw your logo on the front, and then on the back is your website or a verse you like, your mission statement, and then the inside is blank for you to write a handwritten note in. We have a lot of ministry partners that utilize that, and even around the world, to where our folks in Albania have this template that we've given them, and we've given them some directions about how to take a really good picture of a handwritten thank you, and then they email that picture to one of our staff members here in the office, our communications coordinator, and she prints out that handwritten note inside a thank you. And we've gotten good enough at it that it looks real, even to me when it comes off the printer. I'm like, man, this looks like somebody hand wrote this. It doesn't look like it was printed onto a piece of paper. And so nobody gets real mail these days. And so sending handwritten notes to your supporters really goes a long way. We all just get junk in the mail, so getting something real is special to folks. These next few things are kind of just some tips or suggestions, but don't bulk or group email supporters. So if you're sending some sort of mass email, then you're using MailChimp or Constant Contact, you're using some sort of professional template. But if you're just emailing out of your email address and it's going to a bunch of different people, I'd encourage you to copy and paste it and make it personal and address people by name. Maybe you're saying, hey, it was great to run into you last week at Starbucks. I'd love to catch up some more sometime, making it a little more personal. Really goes a long way. Just no one responds to group or bulk emails. And so especially if you're asking for something, if you're asking for volunteers or people to come to an event, or to set up face-to-face one-on-one lunches or coffees, there's people don't respond to those. So just sending out personal emails goes a long ways. What else? Do you guys have any thoughts as I'm kind of getting started into this?
Yeah, I wanted to ask on that last point around bulk
Mm-hmm.
emails. Maybe I'm not fully understanding what you mean by that, but say we're running like my example, I'm running a virtual fundraising event soon, and
Mm-hmm.
that like event invitation is going to go out to, like many thousand people. I'm assuming
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. And if I can put their name in the invite, do it.
Yeah. Well, so one helpful tool is Google has, if you use Google for emails, they have a feature where um, it imports people's names and it looks like it's a personal email. Here, I'm gonna share my screen quick and show you what I'm talking about. But yeah, so just to answer your question, like I rarely, to supporters, if I'm wanting people to do something, whether that's have a meeting or come to some sort of event, I just send them personal emails and I don't send bulk or group emails unless it's using something like MailChimp or Constant Contact. That's just a
Okay.
personal thing that I do.
So if we're using an email provider service that can
Mhm.
personalize with the name, you would say that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's what
for sure.
disconnect connecting that.
Yeah, MailChimp does that too. You just gotta make sure you have the right name in the right box in the contacts list, and that's otherwise
Mhm.
you look like an idiot.
Truth.
So,
True story.
do you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
This bottom button that right
Yeah.
here, it says toggle multi-send mode. And when you click on that, then it will personalize and make it look like you're just emailing that one person. But you have to have Google Contacts filled out. So you have to have all of the people's information in Google Contacts already. But it is a cool feature that if you are just wanting to make it look like a personal email, you can do that. I think starting a prayer team, that was the next thing on my list here. I just encourage all of our ministry partners to have a team of people for their ministry and their ministry that are always praying. That's something that Joe, as our director of our partner care team, he emails out prayer needs to our prayer team, and not just in terms of fundraising, but in terms of just all the ministry that's going on, but just encapsulated in prayer. But often the people who are on the prayer team, if they're not already supporting your ministry, they end up doing so because they're just hearing constantly the work that God is doing and that you are doing and the impact that it's having in people's lives. And so it naturally broadens the circle, but that's really not the intention of it. It's just to actually have people praying.
Mhm.
Another helpful thing is having tangible ideas that people can give to. And so it is, I feel like we're constantly training our supporters how to be generous givers. And so for we obviously we want people to give $50 a month and $100 a month or $500 a month, but people have to start somewhere. And so giving them kind of a fund a need type thing. So recently Sarah Gray on here had example ministry in her presentation of providing nets for people in malaria and for who have malaria. And so you could have a funded need for buy 10 nets for $100 or whatever that may be, or Pepe and Peru. You could fund a month of a food program at one of the schools you guys minister at. Just so brainstorming, being creative of different ways, different needs that people could fund, and putting a price tag on that helps people learn generosity and gets people excited about giving as well. I've talked about the thank you cards. There's also pledge cards. When a lot of times with year-end letters, people send out pledge cards. I think technology has replaced the use for pledge cards in a lot of ways, but they're still really helpful at like banquets or galas, or even face-to-face meetings. If you're asking people for support for the first time, I still encourage people to use pledge cards. And we can, if anyone needs a pledge card, we can send out an example, or I'll have a link at the end of this video for you to download different fundraising printed material templates and stuff. I'll stick that in there for you all. But a really helpful thing in a pledge card is having in there a checkbox for I'd like to join the prayer team, or a checkbox for I'm interested in having coffee with Joe Chenoweth. And so just incorporating other ways for them to get involved or even volunteer. I'd love to volunteer for your ministry in the food distribution pantry or something like that. So it's not just they're pledging their money, but it's
Mhm.
they have more questions and they want to get in, have a meeting to learn more, or they want to volunteer in some way. And then over the last couple years, because of the use of pledge cards has gone down, like we've literally seen the use of pledge cards gone down to where when people send them out with their year-end fundraising letters, most of the time they don't come back. And a lot of times when people send back their pledge cards, they're sending them back blank. It's just like a wrapper around the check, and they're not even completed. And so we've designed this new card called a Get Involved card. And so the Get Involved card, I'll show it on the screen, is one side is basically just a business card with business card information. And when you print this, we print it twice the size of a business card. The other side has 3 ways for people to get involved, and whatever 3 ways you want to put on there for your organization. But typically it's volunteer, pray, and give. And then under give, you have a QR code that goes to the giving page. And then you can also have a QR code, another QR code on there on that side, or maybe even the other side, so it's not confusing about which QR code is for what. Have a QR code that goes to a Get Involved page on the website, which has different volunteer opportunities for people to get involved in. And so a big thing on web design is having a call to action, so that your website isn't just information, but there's actual something tangible that people can get involved in. And so having this Get Involved card that's branded and designed that looks and feels familiar to your website, so that when people land on the website, they feel comfortable, like they're in the right place, and they can sign up for actually getting involved. Colorful infographics are really helpful as well. I'll show some of those on the screen. And just communicating the impact. This is where measurement and evaluation can really help gather data of the impact that your ministry is having. And we've also talked about in other videos how there's 2 different types of people. There's people that want to know the numbers, and the numbers are really important to them. And there's people that are more impacted and want to know the stories that are making up your ministry and making up the impact that you're having. And so an infographic can really help meet the needs of the number of people.
Just back to the pledge card and in-person meetings, I just wanted to hear, like, could you role play what that conversation would look like?
Hey, I've been really grateful for your friendship, and I thank you for your prayer all these years we've been getting our ministry started. Just wanted to take some time to to see if you and your wife would consider giving towards the organization. Right now, we're really looking for monthly support in the $100 to $200 a month range, and just have a pledge card. And I'd love for you to take that home and be praying about that with you and your wife. And I'll follow up in a week or 2. So that's typical.
That's awesome.
That's
Great
what I
job.
would
One of
do.
the things I've pushed, especially Young Life areas, but our ministry partners as well, is anytime you're gathering people or anything's happening, you're obviously always doing kind of an ask for finances. But I think that ask for serving, helping, people resource pool just as much as the money resource pool is almost as important. And giving what you said earlier, very, very clear, very, very specific ways that they can do something. Not just you want to help and join, but like pray at X time or pray for X thing or do one meal or whatever. I find that allows them to have an opportunity to do that, plus then give as well, or that might help them give, as well. So I just think that card can be really used in a lot of ways. Same way of asking like that, Sarah, what he did there, it could be also the deal of asking for a specific way to serve. I think having it in hard copy just adds to it just adds to the ask personally.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think
Just
oh, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. No, I just what Joe was saying there just kind of sparked the idea too of asking for networking opportunities too. Like, hey, do you know anyone that would be interested in being involved in this or helping with this, or do you know anyone that is a graphic designer that could help me? Because I think those are ways that people start feeling like they're excited because they actually can be involved because they know someone that can do that versus, oh, I have no idea how to do X, Y, or Z. I can't even comprehend that. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
I've
absolutely. That's great.
I've also had someone share with me recently that I've started to practice like asking people for their advice, because people really like to be valued in that way and understand that they have advice to give. And they use the phrase, you underwrite what you write. And so, you know, if you have a new program or a new project, or maybe you want to do a men's breakfast and you go to somebody that you think might actually help fund that men's breakfast, but you start off by just asking their advice on like where and when it should be and what restaurant or caterer should use and what time, what day, who should be invited. And then they have more of a likelihood of like wanting to underwrite that project because you just involved them in advice around it. Not to use that in a manipulative way at all, because I think people really have a lot to offer when it comes to helping us like figure out best ways of doing things or reaching a certain population. But to have it be a part of our strategy too, I think, to connect with people and recognize that that's a valuable thing they can give to us too.
Awesome. That's great. I love it. I think we design so much different materials for our ministry partners, from pledge cards and thank you cards and the get involved cards and general information flyers and infographics, and just in websites as well. And so I mention all those things just because we are really good and really aim to keep communications short. That just these days people don't read much, and the sad part is that nobody cares about your ministry as much as you do. And
Yes.
so, and that's so hard to hear, but it's just so true. And also our brains, the way our brains work is that when our brain is overwhelmed with any information, it disengages naturally. And scientists and doctors have been able to prove this through studies showing that our brains burn calories when it is overwhelmed, and then it disengages. And we're all wired that way. It's not a personality thing. And so just thinking about keeping things shorter, just that the less is more mentality, that we want people to ask questions. We don't want to deliver everything they could ever know about what we're doing, because then they're not going to have any questions. And so it's good for people to want more. I feel like that was important thing that I learned early on in ministry and sharing the gospel, was that we want people to want more and want to learn more. So we really do that when we're creating materials for folks, and just want people to keep that in mind. And that really goes into like video lengths as well. We've seen that when we have videos that are 2 to 2.5 minutes, we get on average 90% complete views. But when it's over that time, when you start hitting 3 to 5, 9 and 10 minutes, the stats completely flip, and you only have 10% complete views. And so, what's the goal? Is we want people to watch and to hear everything that we have to share, and so you have to be short and concise, and just to think through more of what you're doing. And that kind of goes on to letter writing, just writing a great letter to your supporters. Keeping it to one page is really important, and keeping it concise. But that's where you could stick in the get involved card or a pledge card or an infographic as well. Having something else that's colorful with graphics too can really draw their attention in. I think, let's see. The last thing I just wanted to mention is just having a year-end giving plan, and just having a specific plan for that. As like when the year begins, January, February, we often meet with all of our ministry partners, and we help them put in place a simple fundraising plan for the year. But then when August and September comes around, we look at how that's gone. We run some reports with them and look at what they did the last year end, and then we put a year-end giving plan in place for just the last quarter of the year. And we do that because the IRS says that 40% of all annual giving happens in the fourth quarter. So in October, November, and December, 40% of the funds that come in, all nonprofits, will come in those 3 months. And the wild thing is that 12% of annual giving happens in the last 3 days of the year. And so just those stats are staggering, and just really show that just the need to communicate well in that season. Like, your supporters are also supporting many other things, and So if you're doing nothing during that season, not planting seeds, not communicating, the idea isn't that you're asking the whole fourth quarter, but you're staying in front of people and sharing stories and videos and pictures and meeting with people face to face. And the goal is to not to just be added noise, but to stand out. And so just taking time to plan for that season and figure out how you can stand out is really important.